Welcome to the Braver Angels podcast, a new way of talking politics. I am joined today by a new co-host, a friend, and a fellow Braver Angels leader, Carlos Hernandez. Carlos and I had a podcast discussion a couple of weeks ago as part of our 2020 campaign and our focus in September on Trump's America and topics that are of particular interest to conservative-leaning Americans. After our discussion, Carlos and I said, we want to do this again, but we want to do it together as co-hosts, red and blue, in the Braver Angel spirit. And Carlos said, hey, I have some friends that I'd like to have on who we want to give a chance to make their voice heard and keep this conversation going. So Carlos, it's good to be back, and thank you so much for joining me here today.
You are so welcome, and I see a lot of happy faces across the country. We'll do introductions by geography, and I'm going to pick on people on the East Coast first, especially from Long Island. Larry, did I pronounce that properly? Long Island?
Go ahead. I would say Long Island would be just fine.
Okay, so why don't you take a few seconds to introduce yourself, Larry, and then from you, we'll go to Iris. Go ahead.
Sounds good. Good morning, everybody. I'm Larry Gutman. I've been a friend of Carlos's for about 8 years now, and friends of his friends for the past 30 years, which is how we all got together. My business experience and political experience with him has been interesting over the years, and we sometimes we see eye to eye, sometimes we don't, of course. But most important, I would say that today's discussion will find that there are Republicans like myself who probably lean more towards independent rather than towards conservative. So it should be an interesting discussion today.
Thank you, Larry. Larry and I have a scorecard on his wall when each of us makes points.
I'm going to mute.
And now we'll switch to another person in the East Coast time zone. Okay. Go ahead, Iris, and unmute yourself and introduce yourself in both languages, Español y Inglés. Go ahead.
Buen días. Buen días. Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. I am a longtime friend of Carlos through my husband because they worked together for many years. And we've gotten to know each other fairly well. I am basically from Long Island, Smithtown, Long Island, but originally from the Bronx. So I'm a Bronx girl. And basically, I ran a cleaning business for many years. So I started from the bottom up. And I've learned how to be flexible.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And now we'll move to the Midwest. I want to introduce Dr. Professor Mark Reinecke, my Phi Kappa Psi brother from Stanford University. Professor Reinecke, introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning. Hey, thank you all for having me. It's nice to be here. So Carlos and I'm sort of pointing at him on my screen. We've been friends. I mean, you may not see the appearance with our pictures, but we are actually brothers. We are as close as one can be. And we've been friends for 30 years. We met in a mobile home of all places. And I've been a professor. I'm professor emeritus at Northwestern now, but I've been a Red my entire life, though I have, like Larry, a very independent streak. My first election when I was a teenager, I had an Anderson sticker on my car. And so I swing both ways. And, like Elizabeth Warren, she was a lapsed Republican. I've swung to the center pretty hard sometimes. I'm very independent in my thinking. So, but it's nice to be here, and we'll see what we've got today.
Thank you. And Mark is also humble. His uncle, not by blood, Ronald Reagan, excuse me.
Ronald Reagan.
In fact,
Ronnie.
Mark's father, rest in peace, Ed Reinecke, was Ronald Reagan's lieutenant governor of the state of California. So when Mark was a little boy, he had visitors come over the house, like Uncle Ron, or to his ranch, in fact.
Yeah, to the ranch.
And now we'll switch to the West Coast, and we'll like to introduce Ruth. Say hello.
Good morning. And hello. And Carlos, thank you for inviting me. Thank you to everybody. Karen, thanks for making this happen as well. So I am not officially on the West Coast anymore. We are moving to Arizona, and that's a story in and of itself. I'm originally from Michigan. I've lived in Israel, Italy, Germany. Loved Silicon Valley, but the reason we're leaving plays very much into why I am voting for Trump. I am generally a red-leaning libertarian, I would say. So I don't really fit the mold of a stereotypical Republican, and I find not many people do. So I look forward to chatting.
Thank you. And my memory now reminds me, this is a holy season in the Jewish faith. So Rosh Hashanah to Ruth and to Larry.
Shana Tova to everybody. Good New Year.
And now we'll switch back to Joe. And Joe is our token Catholic, I think, today. Joe, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Joe, token Catholic. I've been such for several years. No, gosh, I've known Carlos. I've known Carlos since college, I think, Carlos, huh? So just a couple of years. And in fact, my first date with my wife was a double date with Carlos. And that was way back when. I consider Carlos, first of all, thank you for allowing me to be part of this forum. I'm very appreciative of that. I consider myself more of a constitutionalist. Okay, so what does the Constitution say about what we're doing? Those are sort of for lack of a better term, the rules by which we live, the genius rules that were created, multi-hundreds of years ago, a couple hundred years ago, to create this vast freedom experiment that has stood the test of time. So I view everything through the lens of the Constitution, for the most part, as in my thinking.
Thank you.
So,
and
thank you.
Joe and his spouse are also very faithful Catholics. They have served their community as counselors and trainers for folks endeavoring to enter the sacrament of matrimony. And so we'll go back to New York, and we'll let Kieran introduce himself and then ask the first question.
Thanks, Carlos. I can see the skills you've been developing as a moderator and host. That was pitch perfect. So thank you. Yes, my name is Kieran O'Connor. I have been working with Braver Angels now for over 3 years, almost since the beginning when we first got on a bus and kind of on a wing and a prayer, went around doing workshops and planting the seeds for what would become, at that time, called Better Angels Alliances, now Braver Angels Alliances, forged in the spirit of courage that is propelling the 2020 campaign. In terms of today's discussion, as I mentioned, this month is Trump's America, so we want to get right to it and talk about the president. We want to do so in a format that's kind of pulled from our workshops. And so we'll start with 2 questions. The first will be essentially, what is it that you like about President Trump? What are the factors that may go into supporting President Trump? And then secondly, we'll give you a chance to talk about what are your reservations about President Trump? What might your reservations be about voting for President Trump? So we'll start with the first question. And Carlos, why don't I turn things over to you in terms of essentially calling on people, and then we can go from there.
Thank you. We'll go in reverse order by geography. We'll start on the West Coast. And Joseph, question is yours.
Oh boy, no pressure. So I believe the question is, why do I support Trump? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, there are 2 main reasons why I support Trump. And those 2 reasons are what he has done and what he has said. The record on what he has done is fairly clear. If you look at his promises kept page, and you could take that for what it's worth, but there were a ton of things that he indicated were accomplished in his almost first term. But I want to pick 4 that I think are very important. The first one is his stance on energy. One of his campaign promises was to have America become energy independent, which he has done in several ways. we are now energy independent, which is a huge thing. And we are also the world's largest exporter of energy. Okay. We got a call coming in there. The other big accomplishment was his tax reform. So the tax code was changed. The tax reduction happened, which, in my opinion, jump-started the economy more than it has been in the past, to where we have record unemployment, at least before COVID. The other big accomplishment, and one of his campaign promises, was to secure our border, especially our southern border. And I think everyone is pretty clear on his stance on that, and the accomplishments he's made by actually putting up the wall that he said he would put up. And there are several hundred miles of the wall that has been created already. The other, the fourth accomplishment was the amount, the quantity of judges that he has installed throughout the United States in various districts, which for years were just left unattended. And he saw to that as well. So those are the four main accomplishments I think that that he has, that I want to talk about, and that he's done in this last almost 4 years. Any one of them would be enough for me to support him for the next term. And I've come up with, I think, four that stand on their own. And again, that, in my opinion, a huge accomplishment, and it has made America move forward in a way that has benefited many, many millions of Americans. The second reason I support Trump is he is a fighter. Okay, no one can argue that maybe there are some character flaws there, and who doesn't have those? But his ability to fight back against the media onslaught and the barbs coming from the left, and he made fake news a household term, which I think was fantastic. So he is a fighter. We haven't had that in the Republican Party for maybe since Lincoln, maybe. But I appreciate the fact that he fights back. He pushes back. He's a counterpuncher. He enjoys the fight. And that is refreshing. And it is certainly a way.
Looks like we lost Joe for a sec. So we'll pivot to the East Coast. Larry, what do you find favorable about POTUS?
Okay, POTUS. He's different, that's for sure. Without even going any further, there's no question about that. The big thing with Trump was that my goal to have him in office and voting for him was to get the economy going. I didn't agree with the previous presidential plan and format, and that's my right to do so, of course. But as a business owner, we were really hurting. I know that there'll be arguments back and forth that it was started by Obama, that Trump really didn't do, we can go back and forth with all of those things, but the reality of it is one of the biggest concerns was getting the business world started. What I find most advantageous from his service at this point has been to bring business back to America. Whether you know it, I see it directly. I'm a manufacturer, and my customers are all manufacturers. My business has doubled and tripled from a bottom that in 2010 was a third of what I once did, maybe less. So the economics were one of my biggest issues that were going on. Which I will discuss the downside of certain things when we go to the second question, but going forward, yes, he does definitely fight. There's no question about it. There's going to be opposition no matter what. I've seen now, 10 presidents. Nobody's perfect. There's no panacea in the political stadium whatsoever. I do, again, like the foreign policy that he's taken. I mean, if nobody has, as much as they want to argue, again, various pros and cons to the circumstances, China owns us, and not any longer. It's going to fade. I see the manufacturing coming back. People are getting smart. We don't want to ever run into what just happened. They controlled our entire medical field. We had no masks, no gloves, no this, no that. And China was complete control. It's not a rumor, that's a fact, because I'm dealing with the buyers from the government. Again, these situations that are always, and I hate to say it, financially motivated on my end. What else is there? I agree also about filling in the positions of putting the judges back into places. We had a lot of empty holes throughout this country. I suppose we'll get into some other discussions about that as well if we have time. I'm trying to think of some other aspects that really, unfortunately, I'm definitely the financial side of this whole presidency.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
You know, that's really what it comes down to, because I never, and I'll say this in opposition of my own words, I never expected him to get so involved in all the other things, whether it be environmental or this and other. I expected him to place people like a corporation. I wanted to see him run a company as a country, because we were running things in a way that was so social that it was hurting us in a financial. It may have done well for us educationally on the liberal side. It may have done well for the environment, but we were hurting things that would not allow us to support those things financially in the future. In order to be able to do those things, it's one of the things he's given back to people like myself, business owners, corporations, and I see a great future for companies. And we are the backbone of this country, because we're not huge corporations, but we're corporations, what they consider small. But again, that's my stance as far as what I see.
Thank you.
As I said, I do tend to be independent, so I have my opposition to things also, which we'll talk about later.
We will. We will.
You know, but you know, as a person, he's not a politician. Let's face it.
Hold that thought for the second.
Sorry.
Phase. Thank you. Thank you for that. And now we'll pivot to Arizona, to Ruth.
I'm going to mute.
Thanks. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Joe. And thanks, Carlos. So I like Trump because he busts up stereotypes. And in so doing, he empowers minorities. There are more Black Republicans running for public office than ever. There are more minority voices that are proud of coming out and unafraid of coming out saying, we're not towing the left-wing line. We are proud Trump supporters, and we support a Republican or more free market agenda. That's something I'm so relieved to see. Even if I didn't agree with them, I'd still be relieved to see it, because they are empowered. They are, in a sense, recognized as individuals. We're all parts of groups. But what Trump has done through his, let's call it big mouth, is to say, be brave, say what you have to say. Don't let a political party just
It seems we may have lost Ruth on a time lag.
speak up.
Oh, she's back. Okay.
He's very much a demonstrator of that, for better and for worse. I think my internet is unstable.
Thank you, Ruth. And Dr. Reinecke, your perspective. So go ahead and unmute yourself.
There we go. All right, very good. You know, so I'll give you the college professor look at this. If I was offering grades, there's three things I would give him. I'd give him an A+, an A-, and an incomplete on the positive side of the ledger. The A+, I think he gets the high five for the Abraham Accords, for the Mideast peace negotiations. Him cutting a deal of Israel with United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, this is potentially a major step forward, and we'll see how this plays out. But where that came from, it came out of right field. He gets the A+ on that paper. A-, I would say strong economic performance, at least up until the coronavirus hit. You know, unemployment was at a 50-year low. Growth, the GDP was up substantially, and nominal wages were up across the board. Minority wages were up. So it was humming along. And you know something, the tax cuts, both personal and corporate were doing what tax cuts do, which is they stimulate business and stimulate the economy, and they hit the nail on the head. So he gets an A- there. The incomplete is China policy, the trade policy. I think it's not as he thought it was going to be simple to start a trade war and win it, and not so much. But I do think we've seen it with Hunway, and not so much manufacturing as intellectual property and intellectual theft. Somebody had to step up and go toe to toe with China, and we need a new trade organization, a new trade architecture going forward. And he's the first person to actually say, enough is enough, and we need to go toe to toe with this. So that one he draws an incomplete, but these are, I think, 3 important steps forward.
Thank you, Mark. And we're now going to switch to Iris. She's on the phone, by the way, so I'm going to ask her to unmute herself. And Iris, go ahead. Hi. So what do you find favorable about President?
There are so many things that I find good about this man. How do I say? I'm an entrepreneur. I started a business all by myself, and I know what it is to have to keep going even though you're discouraged. And I see in him, he's a fighter. He's strong. He says what he is going to do, and he does it. And he's not a typical politician. I have seen enough politicians who are very well-spoken and everything else, and they say what they have to say to get through the nomination, and then they don't do the things that they're promised to do. And to me, I see a man who has withstood so much harassment in every direction you could think of, and he still manages to get things done. I feel very proud of him in the sense I know he's not an angel. He has his things, but I don't think there's any politician that doesn't have something that's not perfect. But what he's accomplished is unbelievable. His policies with Israel, his border thing, and I'm a Latin American. I'm a Puerto Rican, and I believe in the wall for various reasons. One is that, I believe you should come in legitimately, not try to come over and then get all the benefits that they get without doing anything. Nobody ever gave me anything. So I feel that you have to work for what you want, strive for it, and you can accomplish things. And I feel he's a worker, he's a pusher, he's a businessman, and I like that. I like a tough, strong individual, because that's what we need in this country right now. We're falling apart right now. I think that's it.
Thank you. Gracias a usted. And she's on an island. You can hear the sounds. So
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. Hey, it's very real. Now, I want to make sure I have Kieran's consent. Do you find now appropriate time to flip to the unfavorable? Okay.
Please, go ahead.
On the unfavorable side, I can see you on the screen. Raise your hand if you like to go first. Ruth, please, on the unfavorable side.
Well, the issue of him being strong, I think, is very good, but it also poses a bit of a problem because it can make us feel very secure. And we need to remember that just because we have a strong leader doesn't mean we can be at all passive or lax. We need to let that strength inspire us to do the same sort of work and to be as vocal and to take on the hard issues and to keep our promises to self and our community. So to not defer upwards as so often is done when people feel they have a strong government or a strong head of state.
Okay, who would like to go next? What they find unfavorable about POTUS? Joseph.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great. My apologies for having my battery run out. Very amateurish thing to happen. Sorry about that. Anyway, yes, and as for many people, a strong point can be one of those things that becomes a weak point. I love the fact that he's a fighter and that he'll fight back and counterpunch. There are times when maybe he comes off the cuff too much and has to either back down from that or, suffer the arrows from the other side. So, that to me, that may be something that could be improved on. The other thing is, there is no doubt that he has absorbed a media onslaught and a Democrat onslaught that to the likes of which no one has ever seen. And what that, to me, that means, will he get tired of this? Will he give up? I mean, we're all human. At some point, this sort of abuse breaks anyone. So I'm leery of the fact that please don't give up, okay? And so that's always in the back of my mind, that he just may give up and say, screw this, I'm gonna go back to my nice life I had before. So that's the other thing that concerns me as well.
Thank you, Joe. And we'll pivot now to Mark.
Well, I'm actually a bit more critical than that, and I've got a number of things on my mind. One is, I think, the tweeting, the incoherent comments, what I would call arrogance and dismissiveness of others, and labeling people. It's just not, it's not appropriate. It's not presidential. I think the large deficits, last year, 2019, it was $984 billion. If I found that sitting on a sidewalk, I'd pick it up. That's a lot of money. And this is way beyond, it's 60% over the there are congressional budget offices, an independent group, and he is 60% over the projections that they'd had for the deficit. It's going to be $23 trillion in 10 years. This is a lot of money, and it's fiscally irresponsible. Now, you can say we have to do it because of COVID, but still, we need to keep our eyes on our wallet and on our tax structure. I think healthcare reform is problematic. There's a lot of people who now are losing their jobs and who are losing health insurance, and we should be looking for a way to have a safety net. Full disclosure, I lost my job this month. Not good. And so even I'm in this basket of people who have to, get COBRA and get health insurance. It's tricky. It's tricky. I think he's mismanaged. He's not been coherent and stable in his management of coronavirus. He clearly does not abide by scientific authority and research. He's got his own opinions, and he's dismissive of scholars, which is not a sound basis for policy. I think he's got problems with Putin and doesn't stand up to Russian meddling in our election. They've got, for lack of a better term, shenanigans, and all of the intelligence community says it's going now. It continues. And finally, I'm concerned about Afghanistan. I think he's got a drawdown by May 21. They're planning on that. But he announced that to the Taliban. And I really am quite concerned that a lack of support for the Afghan government is going to leave, how would you put it, a failed state when the government pulls out in 2021. So there's a number of things that I think are of concern.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah. Thank you. And we have our last two guests from to Larry.
Can you hear me?
10-4.
All right. Mark, I agree. We'll start there. Okay, so give me a little extra time on this one, please, because this is where the independent and the leaning and all the rest. Donald Trump is not a politician, which is what I ended up the last conversation. He has a tendency to shoot off his mouth, which is no good. He doesn't have that political smoothness or well-articulated speech that would comfort this country in areas that the Democrats, when they attack, they're right because he says the wrong things, but he means the right. Well, he means right, he says it wrong most of the time. What people don't understand, I'm going to specifically pick on the COVID situation. In this country, you have 330 million Americans. If that president would have turned around and immediately said, we've got a problem, this country would have gone into a panic. And as I like to call it, you've got 3 days till chaos will absolutely wipe this country out. They ran the supermarkets. You had no toilet paper. You had no food. You had no meat. That was just with mild conversation of COVID. If he would have told the truth, there would have been a disaster. If John F. Kennedy would have told the people they were hours away from nuclear obliteration, this country would have flipped. But he was well-spoken, and he smoothed it over and lied through his teeth in front of the entire country that everything's okay. People don't understand. A president is here to protect us from ourselves, and he has to instill confidence. I wish he spoke better. That's one of the things that really disturbs me. The tweeting and all that nonsense with this social media is ridiculous for a president to be doing. I don't agree with it at all. There are certain aspects that, as the people have said, we need more presidential aspect. I can't deal with an orator that doesn't do anything, and I can't deal with a guy who can't speak either, because sometimes the people just need to hear the right thing the right way and instill that confidence. Yes, there are lies. There's no question about it. There are stories, but it's not intended to be malicious. He wants the people to believe everything is going to be okay. He has to restore faith in this country in a situation that can cause an extreme problem. You have civil war, in a matter of speaking, going on in this country right now. You've got two sides with really good reasons for arguing with each other. But we need to find, which is what this seems to be all about, a way to get the people on track to talk again. We really need that situation. So this president lacks in that. He has wonderful ideas and thoughts, as I said, for the financial. As far as foreign policy, yes, he's A- or incomplete, excuse me. He's got to figure a better way to deal with the outside world to some degree. We definitely need to stand everybody back off this country and treat us improperly. Our military, whether you agree or disagree, protects us. People, as one movie once said, you have no idea, or whatever it takes to, you couldn't handle the truth, what it takes. I have friends in the military that would begin to tell you stories that you wouldn't believe, but it happens. So there are many aspects that are good, but again, I think the overall picture of Donald Trump is that he's non-political, he's very controversial, and he himself has to find a way to speak to the people in a way that it works on both sides. And this is where we're lacking. It's a definitive controversy. It doesn't even matter what the subject matter. It could be any. He could talk about ice cubes, and they're going to argue that his ice cubes are not the right size and shape. It makes no difference. But I would like to see a change. And if he gets into office for his second term, I think that his advisors, the people around him, he's got to lose the attitude. I agree with this. He has to stay strong, but he needs to be molded a little bit so that the people will listen. That's all. We're just not listening to each other anymore. It's a terrible thing. Beyond that, look, we're not going to agree on policies. I don't agree with his environmental stance. I think he's supporting people. It's ridiculous. The environment is, we live here. We want to see the world be, succeed, to stay healthy, etc. Tax reform, etc. Some is great, some is not so great. There's going to go back and forth, but it's helped us. It's helped myself. How long will it help? Till it hurts. That's what's going to happen with tax reform. As I said, foreign policy, the wall, etc. No, I don't want people coming into the country without the proper ways of the proper investment. My parents are both from Europe. It took 4 years after World War II to come into this country. 4 years, so that they could get citizenship and be able to stay, and all the things that they had to do.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry. I told you it was going to be long. I apologize. But
and I've got Iris standing by. I'm going to ask her to unmute yourself. And
oh, I'll mute. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Iris.
Okay, I was listening to this, and I kind of agree with a lot of things that he said, except for a few things. He is kind of rough at the edges, but I have seen through the years with politicians that they are smooth and they say everything that you would like them to say, and they do the opposite, and they do what is a good investment for them, not for the people. What I am finding in my own thinking is that what he's doing, and yes, he sometimes doesn't tell the truth as you were talking before, that he made it sound like it was not that bad as far as the virus, and that because there's a point there. You're not gonna tell somebody you're gonna die tomorrow, and expect them to react, calm. They're not gonna react calm. They're gonna go crazy. So you have to be kind of a diplomat to kind of like make it sound like I'm in charge and everything is okay for now until things can be situated properly. And I think he was right in that. He had to do that to try to calm the people. I'm an avid believer in the border because I myself, I was born and raised here. But I had a lot of workers that were not from here, and there were a lot of issues regarding that. And I always felt like I had friends of mine that were Dominican who worked years to get papers to get their families over here, but they did it the legal way. They did it the right way. And I just feel like, how bad they must feel when they see somebody else coming in and getting everything they want, school, hospital, housing, and all this stuff for free. And they have worked hard and can't get these things because they're putting money out just to get their citizenship papers and papers done. So that annoys me. That annoys me. Yes, he needs to calm down with the tweeting. That part I'll agree with you. I think maybe this experience that he's had for the last couple of years will probably help him, if he gets elected, to improve on that. I really do believe that, because he legitimately, to me, seems that he wants to he loves his country. He does love this country. I feel that deep in my heart. And I know that the other side hates him, and they won't even leave a little opening to talk about it. And that's the sad part, because without talking like what we're doing right now, you can't go anywhere. If you're talking to the wall, what's the point? If that person is just going to say, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, then nothing you say, not even something that's legitimately correct, is going to make them change. They will not change because they have so much hate. And that's what's bad in this world. And one more thing. I think Christianity is another thing that's really bothering me. The fact that they're not allowing the churches to open annoys me to no end, because they're allowing casinos to open and they're not allowing a church to open or synagogue or whatever, because we have to have space between each other. How about being in a parking lot with people in their car with masks on and a pastor trying to preach to his people, and they shut them down? I don't get it. I don't get that. You can't play one game and then play the other game. It's either all or nothing.
Thank you. Gracias. Gracias. And in true Braver Angels fashion, we're going to flip to Mr. O'Connor. And by Braver Angels fashion, questions of curiosity. So,
sure.
To you.
Yeah, well, thank you all for sharing. It was very illuminative. I guess one question I have as a blue is sort of the flip side of this is Trump's opponent, Joseph Biden. So I'm curious, what are your guys' thoughts on Biden, given both his own record, as a senator from the 70s, who historically has been known to work across the aisle, and then as Obama's vice president, and now as the standard bearer for a party that has obviously become very polarized in response to Trump. So just curious how you guys think about Uncle Joe, as some people call him. So I guess if anyone wants to take that first, raise your hand. Yeah, Ruth, go ahead.
Sure. Well, this again follows up on some of our criticisms of Trump. Trump just outright calls Biden senile. And I don't like that. I don't think it's respectful, but I do think it's truer than a lot of Democrats would like to believe. I think it's sad. I also think it's sad that in all his time in Washington, more wasn't done. But I do see Biden as not in a cognitive position to take office. And it requires a little bit of humility to say, you know, I'll sit this one out and refocus and let somebody else run for president. And I think that's what should have been done. I just don't think Biden is fit.
Any others? Mark, yeah, go ahead.
Biden seems like a nice guy, a sensible guy, rather moderate. He does work across the aisle, and he's certainly experienced. That's for sure. We'll grant that. I share some of the concerns about, you know, cognitive abilities, but we'll see how that plays out. The larger issue, though, I think, was his selection of a vice president. You know, if he had picked Amy Klobuchar, I would have been, you know, this is cool. He's moving to the middle. Instead, he selected Kamala Harris, who has, my understanding, is the most liberal voting record of any member of the Senate. And what this says to me is that he is beholden to the progressive left of his party. And, you know, the notion of socialism and the entitlements that they want to put into play, the, for lack of a better term, re-education of America in terms of liberal ideology. I just can't get behind that. Can't do it.
Larry, yeah, go ahead.
One second. Can you hear me? I'm on. Okay. Again, I agree with Mark. I think he's probably a nice guy. I think he's suffered a lot in his personal life. I think it has affected him tremendously. He's had losses that none of us could ever even want to imagine. So we give him on a human level. I feel for the man. I am concerned about his ability. I think he would make a great vice president in the respect of if you want to have some balance across the lines. Running this country makes me nervous. Resurrect Kennedy, I'd be a happy guy for Democratic vote. Although everybody's about to shoot me for probably saying that. That's really the only concern. His choice, again, I agree, not really happy with an extreme left choice. If we're going to try to find balance, that has to be. But then again, if you want to pick on us the other way, Pence is the extreme of our side. So, you know, maybe that's the political game that needs to be played. I'm not smart enough for that part of the game. I don't want to play it. But overall, that's my concern is I don't think that he's strong enough to be president of the United States. I'm going to kind of leave it. That's it. And I have no other bad things to say about him.
And I guess one quick follow-up, are any of you guys still on the fence about who you're going to vote for, or you've all decided? Mark, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm a true independent. So the answer is yes. I'm one of the, I think there's 3 of us in the country. So yes.
And so you're waiting to see how it shakes out over the next few weeks.
I am just rolling. You know, I have to tell you, just this entire endeavor here of sitting down and thinking through what do I like about Trump, what do I not like, has been, why am I a red? Carlos and I talked about this. I shared some things with him about it. It was a thought-provoking experience, and I'm still going through that. I think it was, who was the philosopher? Bertrand Russell. He said, I'd hate to die for my beliefs because I might be wrong. This has been an exercise in clarifying my beliefs and why I think what I think. So it's been useful, but I'm still going through it.
Cool. Well, I have one more question that I'm interested in, but Carlos, do you have any questions of curiosity that appeal to you?
Well, let's go down what we had thought we might go down. The Supreme Court justice opening.
Yes, and it also looks like Iris has
let's have Iris come on
herself,
first.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, Iris, go ahead.
Go ahead, Iris.
Hi. I was listening to what was said about the president, the future, Biden. I also feel that for the responsibility that this man would have in that position, that he is not capable to carry this on. This is too much stress. mental stress, physical stress, and you have to be a very, very strong person, an alert person, to be able to carry on the responsibility of that position. And I don't think he's qualified for that. I really don't. He has shown it on TV. He has shown it in the questions that have been asked to him, which were minor questions, nothing of major importance. He's not out there fighting for things, and he's making a lot of mistakes. And again, you don't want to belittle him because you think he's going senile. That's a personal opinion, but it shows when you see him on TV. It shows when he speaks. And you want somebody in that position to be strong, to be able to take the pressures of every day of dealing with every kind of conflict there is, and being able to stand strong. And he's not the man for this. He's not. They might have chosen a better candidate. He's not the one. That's my opinion.
Carlos, I see you're talking, but you're muted.
Karen, how much time do we have to address the SCOTUS question?
I'm happy to go a few more minutes. And
Okay.
Iris, would you mind unmuting yourself just to
Yes.
avoid the background
Yes.
noise? Thank you. So yeah, as Carlos mentioned, in true 2020 fashion, as if coronavirus wasn't enough, we also have a Supreme Court vacancy, which is further dividing people. I think my understanding is a lot of conservatives are excited about the vacancy and support President Trump filling it as soon as possible, potentially before the election. And then there are a lot of Democrats who are outraged because they say that when Obama had a Supreme Court vacancy 9 months before the election, Mitch McConnell refused to fill it because he said, we have an election coming up, the American people should decide. And so now Democrats are saying, well, now you're adopting a different standard now that you're the one in power. So that's how Democrats feel, but I think Republicans, sort of, some of them say, well, that's politics. So I guess I'm just curious, how do you guys think about this SCOTUS issue, given that it's become such a hot topic in the presidential race? Joe, go ahead.
Well, let me say this about that. On one hand, if the president said, well, we'll wait till after the election, that is confidence that he's going to win the election because he has no qualms about picking one before or after the election, thinking he wouldn't be the one picking it after. So, I mean, that is one situation there. But going back to the actual choice, one of the reasons we elect presidents is how we think they will choose Supreme Court justices. The job of a Supreme Court justice is to interpret the Constitution and to rule based on the Constitution. And as we have seen in the past, there have been Supreme Court justices who we would characterize as activists rather than interpreters. On one hand, I am ecstatic that he's going to have the 3 scoops at the judges. This is choice number 3. So I'm ecstatic that he has a chance to actually do this. So, and I always fall on the side of, we want judges that interpret the Constitution, not activists. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Larry, go ahead. You're muted, Larry.
There we go. Sorry about that. I don't know why I did that. The perfect Supreme Court, Ginsburg and Scalia. If it's not equally divided properly, we don't have a proper Supreme Court. I don't care what they say. I don't want to see a system which leans one way or the other. The idea is to have fair and just arguments. You have to be able to discuss things. if they go too extreme, we're all going to get hurt somewhere. I don't care what they think. It's my opinion. That's it.
Anyone else who wants to weigh in on the SCOTUS issue? Ruth, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So back when Mitch McConnell made his argument about not being able to appoint a justice because it was an election year, I think underscores the opportunistic nature and political nature of discussions our elected representatives should be having, and where they've gone wrong. These should not be political discussions. We need to radically reform our society to have principle-based discussions, and we need to hold our politicians accountable for that. That is the true radicalism right now. It's making sure our elected representatives are principle-based, not partisan or politically based. And that's on all of us.
Mark, yeah, go ahead. Take us home.
You know something, Ruth? I agree with you entirely. When there are political tricks, from the breaking of the filibuster rule to Mitch McConnell blocking Obama's candidate, to thinking about packing the court. Now they say they want to raise it to 13 or 15 justices. These sorts of things come back and bite you in the end. McConnell shouldn't have done it, should not have done it. We need to treat each other with a sense of respect and decorum and allow this. I would say it's Trump's prerogative to put up a nominee for the Supreme Court, and we should give her careful consideration to see if she's a jurist worthy of the position. And it's as simple as that. But that sort of balanced stance should be held by all.
Thank you. And Iris, would you like to have a final say? Go ahead.
I agree with Ruth that you have to go by the principle-based Constitution and what it actually says, not what your personal opinion is on it in any way. You have to go basically by the Constitution. And if you follow that, it's like anything else. If you follow that, you should be going down the right way, I think.
Gracias. Thank you. Kieran, you want to take us out in Braver Angels fashion?
Sure. Well, I think that's a good note to end on. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think our listeners will get a lot out of it too. Really grateful to you all for coming on and for being involved in Braver Angels in general. You know, the more Americans we can get to come into this community, the better. And that's ultimately why we're all here. And also a note of gratitude to Carlos for coming on and being the first guinea pig, for taking some of my sharp questioning, and for doing round two and getting all of you guys to come on. So thank you all, and thank you, Carlos. Carlos, do you have any parting words for our Braver Angels members and any other Americans who may be listening to this podcast and suffering from everything that's happening in politics right now?
Well, I can't help but speak from the Catholic vein. When Mass is coming to an end, the presider, the priest, says to the congregation, "Go in peace, serve the Lord." Well, I'm not saying you have to believe in the Lord. Go in peace, serve your country. That's my ending.
Correct.
Yep. Thank you to all. And Kieran, I'll see you on the other side at another meeting.
Thanks.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And thank you to Michael, our engineer back in Culver City, California.